Hello everyone and welcome back to the Visual Studio 2010 and .NET Framework 4 Learning on Channel 9. So Drew, in this video, what specifically are we going to be trying to cover?
Well, in this video we're going to talk about .NET Framework 4.
Okay.
And we'll talk about a little bit about Visual Studio 2010, which is appropriate for this series.
It's a good overview of all the content.
I think what we want to do here is just kind of set the stage, set this tone for the rest of the training kit, and kind of give people context on what overall is coming in .NET Framework 4 and Visual Studio.
Sounds awesome.
I think in other videos we'll be able to dive a little bit deeper into all these different technologies.
Okay.
And we'll add more over time as well to really cover all of the different things that are coming in this next release.
Sounds great.
Let's talk about .NET Framework 4 first. So some of the themes around .NET Framework 4, well, the first one's really around kind of some of the deep investments that we're making in the framework itself. People may not know that this release of .NET Framework 4 is really a new release of the CLR. It's a new release of the libraries, and it gets its own directory in the Windows directory. So in the past, in the last several releases, it's been more additive, where we've added things on top of the same base. And so this one, we're making some deep investments. So one of those is really around the Managed Extensibility Framework. What's the Managed Extensibility Framework?
Well, the Managed Extensibility Framework is this great framework that allows you to make your own applications extensible. And by that means like third-party extensions, so that your app can have an experience where you develop the core app, and then you build a plugin or an add-in, and then you can just drop it in the directory, and it just lights up. And that's one implementation, right? But then you can set up that extensibility in many different ways. The great thing is Visual Studio uses that natively, so the extensibility model for VS and your applications kind of become the same, which is pretty cool.
Now it is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So another investment we're making is around parallel computing. This is an important area to really invest in at this point, as we see more and more computers have multiple processors or multi-core processors. My laptop here has a dual-core processor in it, but a lot of the applications that you run today only take advantage of a single core or a single processor. Actually writing applications to take advantage of these multiple processors is a fairly difficult task.
Yeah, totally.
In the past, you've had to take your best developers. Jason always says this, you have to take your best developers in your organization and put them on the task of parallel development. And
which is not core to the business.
It's not. It's not. So you'd rather take those guys and put them on problems that actually bring value to your business.
Make money.
Absolutely, making money is good. So what we're doing here is adding a bunch of technologies, a series of technologies around parallel development, and just making that easier for developers. And Jason actually will go over this in his video in this training course, so people can dive into that a little bit deeper.
Awesome.
So another area we're making some investments is around interoperability and with WCF. And so WCF, Windows Communication Foundation, is the way that you really build services on our stack that can either project SOAP messages or RESTful type services. And what we're doing in this release is really adding additional protocols around both SOAP as well as building in additional capabilities to make it easier to build more kind of RESTful applications.
Sounds great.
So that should make it a lot easier for people to interoperate, whether it's across just applications in their org or whether it's across platforms or with other organizations as well.
Yeah. And what about languages? So
languages, we've got the standard languages. We've got C#, we've got VB, we've got C++. All of those are getting improvements both in the framework as well as in the IDE. And we're also adding an additional language in this release, which is F#, a functional programming language. That'll also help around kind of mathematical applications as well as applications that need to be concurrent in a functional programming language. It makes it a little bit easier to build an application that takes advantage of those multiple processors. So Jason also has a video there that he's going to be talking about managed language investments.
So anybody that really loves concurrency, there's a whole bunch of deep content there for that space.
Right. Now another theme is time to solution. And in here, there's a bunch of technologies around the space that you concentrate on a lot, which is web. Tell us a little bit about what's coming with the web.
Yeah, so I mean, when you think about being able to do rapid development in the web, typically you want to be having more control over what you want to do. That way you're not fighting against the framework. You want something that aids you in your development, but also helps you do what you need to do quickly. So MVC was a great framework. It was released earlier this year. It really gives developers complete control over what they want, the rendering, JavaScript, CSS, so forth. But there was still some improvements that needed to be made to make it a little bit more rapid in terms of kind of doing applications that were, maybe line of business apps and so forth. So MVC 2 is now in the box with Visual Studio 2010, which is great. A lot of people have kind of wondered, when are those going to align? And it comes with a lot of new features. There's a video that I've done that goes into that more detail that shows how the productivity is even greater. ASP.NET Ajax as well. It's traditionally been server-side in previous releases. We've now addressed that and said, how can we make it more client-centric? So if you're looking to do richer web applications, but once again, still want that productivity, so you don't write a bunch of plumbing, that's in there. Dynamic data as well is getting even simpler, as simple as one line of code to get something configured, and I'll show all that in the other video as well. So the web space in general is the best it's ever been. In many ways, there was a lot of overhauls and rewrites of pieces of like web forms, for instance, where we addressed all the controls and said, how can we make these things better in general? And overall, it's going to be, I think, make time to solution pretty slick.
So we're not all building web applications, right?
That's
Some of us
true.
are building Windows applications.
Yep.
So what are some of the technologies around data access that make it easier to, I suppose it makes it easier to build web applications as well, but can also help in that communication between the, say, your services, your infrastructure, and your client when you're building a Windows application? Right.
So you mentioned how the SOAP and the REST investments have improved. And one of those specific things is ADO.NET Data Services. And that was, we all know that was released in .NET 3.5 SP1 last year. Had a lot of great stuff. It made consumption of services that were very data-centric and RESTful and really easy to consume, totally streamlined. But now in the next version, in the box, we have the vNext of data services, and it is much more streamlined for client consumption. So the server and the client APIs both have a ton of new features. There's data binding support. So if you're using WPF or Silverlight, for instance, it's going to be way easier to use. And so I think whether you're doing web apps or client applications, data consumption and using services is going to be just dead simple.
Cool.
Yeah.
So that actually leads nicely into the last theme that we have here, which is one set of skills. And one set of skills is really taking that same investment that I've made in learning various framework technologies and being able to use them in a lot of different places. And so one of those places is with cloud apps. So we've got Windows Azure that is getting ready to be released very soon for businesses to use for running applications in the cloud, so to speak. And with when you do those applications, you build those applications, you can build those on the .NET framework. So you're taking that same set of skills that you have today and moving those out to the cloud, just like you can take those same set of skills and build for web or for Windows. Now another area is around rich internet applications. When we say RIA applications, what do we mean, and what's coming in .NET framework around that space?
Well, I mean, so RIA, right, rich internet applications can mean JavaScript applications or Silverlight apps. So some of the great investments, right, we had Silverlight 3 was released earlier this year, but then now you have the in and out of browser experience with that, as well as enhanced tooling in Visual Studio, which will enhance both Silverlight and actually WPF.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So why don't we, we've talked about .NET Framework, why don't we jump into Visual Studio a little bit and give people a little intro to Visual Studio. Some people might have seen this in earlier betas, but there's some significant changes here just in Beta 2, which was just released
I think, is there a new logo there? Nice little color scheme.
There is a new logo. I like it.
I like the purple.
The new Infinity logo.
Yeah.
It feels nice.
It's kind of sexy.
Cool. There's actually a new start page here as well, right? So get rid of the pop-up there. There's a nice new start page. And the start page, just like in Beta 1, is now based on WPF and is customizable through XAML. So you can fully customize what shows up on the start page. What we've done is kind of changed it around a little bit and provided some more information to get people started with Visual Studio. So when we talk about kind of learning more beyond what we're sharing in this training course, another great place to look is actually in these resources that are in the start page.
That's great.
So we also have the ability to go ahead and create new projects, open projects here, and we also have a really nice recent project list that you can really control and pin the projects that you want to keep on that start page. If you don't like this start page, you can customize it. I believe that there's going to be a lot of people in the community that customize start pages and then share them around, and so it'll be fun actually to see what people do with the start page to make it more and more useful to what developers need.
Yeah, it's like the new developer portal that you can customize. Yep. That's cool.
So another new area for Visual Studio that you'll notice right away is the File New dialog. It's got a new organization to it. Not only do we have kind of the projects that we're used to seeing, but there's also the ability to go on and get online templates. So we'll be able to use the templates that come with the product. We'll also be able to go and get templates that come from the community.
Can you actually go back to installed templates?
Yeah.
I think I just saw something that's huge. So
what's huge?
What's the sort by?
Sort by?
What is the values in that? So we can actually now have it sorted by a logical order? Wow.
You can actually sort by something that makes
That's going to change lives. Nice.
It will change lives. Nice. So we also have the typical drop down here for the version. So the multi-targeting in Visual Studio, you can still do that. You can go all the way back to .NET Framework 2 if you need to do that. And then we have kind of the typical hierarchy that we've seen in past versions of Visual Studio.
Right.
The languages, and you see the languages that we're used to.
F#,
Basic, C#, C++, and then this new one called F#, and then your other project types. Now there's actually a couple new project types underneath those languages, though, if you look closely. We've got Windows. We've talked a little bit about Windows and data access.
Yep.
If you're building a Windows application using Windows Presentation Foundation, you've got a new designer in Visual Studio that supports things like data binding. You've got the new controls in WPF that you can start to leverage, such as the data grid. So building line of business applications in Windows Presentation Foundation will become a lot easier with this release. You've got our web templates. What's new around the web in Visual Studio itself?
Well, a couple things. So one, there you see MVC2 web app.
Yep.
So as I mentioned earlier, right in the box. Also, all of the traditional ASP.NET web application templates have been revamped in a few ways. So one, the web.config file, if you were to create a new application, is completely empty. New CLR, everything's been moved to the machine.config. So it's nice and clean when you create an ASP.NET web application. It's just nice and slated.
And as you know, I mean, you're kind of an expert in the area. For me, when I go into that web.config file and I see that huge list of configuration, that's pretty overwhelming.
It's
so it's nice to know that that's going to be simplified.
Yeah,
so.
And also the MVC template, people that have been using it have come to appreciate that it comes with security out of the box. So you create a new project and it's like, here's a simple implementation. Web Forms didn't have that, but now in the Web Forms application template, it will come with a security and jQuery as well. So that isn't specific to MVC. We're shipping jQuery with all the ASP.NET templates.
Cool, awesome.
Pretty cool, yeah.
So we also have the Office templates that we're used to. With Office, there's a couple kind of big things here. One is that there's improvements now in the click once deployment. So in the past, when you were building Office applications, you had to deploy each of your add-ins or templates separately as separate click once deployments. And now with the click once improvements, you can actually deploy those all together. We've also solved some of the security blockers that made it difficult for people to actually get those add-ins out on users' desktops with this release. So that's really nice. Another area is this no PIA, as we say it. One of the things you have to do with an Office application is include what we call interop assemblies, primary interop assemblies with your application. And with this release, we actually are taking the meaningful parts of those assemblies and actually embedding them in your application, so you don't have to worry about having those assemblies deployed with your Office application. Makes the package
even
a lot
easier
smaller.
to do.
Absolutely.
Easier is always better.
Yeah. Then we have this cloud thing. So what will happen with cloud services, if you want to build a Windows Azure application, you'll see that there's a template here, and basically the first time you run this template, it'll download the Azure tools for you without restarting Visual Studio. Those new templates will show up, and you'll be able to start creating Windows Azure applications and deploy those to the cloud. So it's another nice addition here to Visual Studio.
That's going to be really popular.
So we have some templates for reporting with Crystal Reports, or our own reporting technology. SQL Server Reporting Services, what it's called.
Yep.
And then we also have SharePoint.
SharePoint development is huge.
This is a huge investment.
Yeah.
And if we had our friend Steve Fox here, he would
go on and on about it.
Go on and on, as he always does. He's a good guy. We'll probably feature him actually in a video in the training course, and he'll go deeper into what's in SharePoint. Actually, what we have is a lot of new templates in Visual Studio for SharePoint. Not only templates for the projects themselves, but templates for creating all the different elements that you plug into SharePoint. We also have a much better debugging and deployment experience for SharePoint. The tooling is just so much better. If you were a SharePoint developer in the past, it was hard to get an environment set up. It was hard to actually know where to deploy files to. All of that's now taken care of for you in Visual Studio. It's a great environment for building those applications. For Silverlight, we've got the typical Silverlight templates. So we'll be supporting Silverlight 3 in this release. And for test, we've got typical test projects. For WCF and workflow, the big news here is really the combination of these two technologies. WCF, you'll see your typical kind of WCF service library, but then you'll notice that in both the WCF grouping as well as the workflow grouping, there's this WCF workflow service application. And what this actually does is makes it really easy to build a workflow that's exposed through a WCF service.
Nice.
So if you're wanting to tie your workflow into other applications in your organization, or you're just wanting to loosely couple a bunch of workflows together through services, this makes it a lot easier. In the past, you had to kind of plumb all that yourself. So there's some great things, new things here in Visual Studio that I think will make people's lives a lot easier.
Yeah.
You know, we haven't even talked much about the ALM, the Application Lifecycle Management tools, and there's a lot of new things there that we'll be adding to the training course in really the next few months. So,
Awesome.
This is pretty exciting stuff.
It's all there, yeah.
So why don't we close out this video and let people dive into the course. There's a couple labs that are actually in the overview that'll walk you through Visual Studio, as well as a lab that talks about Managed Extensibility Framework. And then there's all the other units that we've been creating videos for and labs for, so that people can kind of dive deep into some of these technologies.
Yeah, there's a lot there.
Cool.
So awesome. Thank you very much for tuning in.